A&P-REACTS. I'm here today with Ben from Evile to talk about Hell Unleashed, out April 30th on Napalm Records. The boys are back. The boys are back.
Damn right we are. Back with a vengeance, dude.
How does it feel?
In all honesty, I'm a ball of anxiousness. But I think it's great to be back. It's great to have new material after 8 years away. And I hope the fans appreciate the work and the effort we've put into this new album. It's been a long time coming.
Before we talk about the record, I have to ask you this. I love the Hell Unleashed video and the power that you put into that video. I mean, your charisma, your style, your drum playing in that video, I was absolutely taken back. You've gained a new fan.
That's very kind of you to say, dude. Thank you. I pride myself on being quite an honest player. I'm totally self-taught. I've never had a lesson. And there's other guys out there that could clean the floor with me, I'm sure. But what you see is what you get when I'm behind a kit. And it's kind of an extension of my own personality. I hit hard and just try and play my heart out behind my kit, you know?
You put on the whole music video is a show, but you put on a show within the show with your playing on that video. Like, if there's one thing I take away from it, is how cool you were in that video. I mean, like, you could have sold coolness and used that video as your advertisement.
That's really kind of you to say, dude. Thank you. It's a little known fact, but I kind of alluded to it on the behind the scenes footage that we put up on YouTube. At the start of December last year, I was really, really poorly. I was in hospital for a number of days, and that video was actually filmed just 3 days after I came out of the hospital. I had major abdominal surgery, so during the course of recording that music video, I actually had 23 stitches right up the middle that still hadn't healed properly. They were all stapled up. So the facial expressions you see in that video are legit, you know.
It's real pain and real blood that went into making that video.
It made me perform that a little bit harder. Adrenaline got me through.
Looking at the record, I mean, you guys have been on a very long hiatus since Skull. What has this hiatus done for the band in a positive way? What do you see positive coming out from this long break?
I think if anything, it's made us really, really, really hungry. It's made us want it all over again, and it made us realize how much music we all missed collectively. And at the same time, we missed that creative aspect. When you're a creative person and you don't have an outlet for it, it tends to drive you crazy. And the four of us, we all had ideas banding around for a long, long time. And just the relief of getting the album finally recorded after 8 years and having such a good product to give the fans, for us, it means everything.
Is the title of the record an extension of everything that went into making the record?
Yeah, and I think if you listen to it in its entirety from front to back, you can hear that pent-up aggression, that pent-up frustration, the whole pressure of having, a couple of weeks during lockdown to be able to record it. We needed to get everything vented and out in the open in that time. And I think the album is a perfect embodiment of that.
How is the creative process for you guys? Like, I mean, it's been a long time between records. Did things change going into this album from a creative process perspective? Like, how do you guys tackle an album like Hell Unleashed?
So for us, usually, the first 4 albums were always going back and forth between the 2 Drake brothers, Matt being the front man and All being our lead guitarist at the time. So the dynamic was split directly 50-50 between that in terms of writing. We all put ideas forward. We all contributed in our own ways. But with those 2 guys being the kind of forerunners of musical, not ability, but the theory side of it, how parts and compositions go and things like that. We left All and Matt to that, and the kind of dynamic they had working together was All would come up with an idea, and then Matt would put a counterpoint to it, and they'd hash it out between themselves until they found a middle ground, and then that was generally the best course of action for working through the ideas in a rehearsal room. This time around, with Matt stepping away from the album and from the band, it left All to have a bit more free reign, and we were more open to contributing our ideas, which All had then developed further and put into some kind of semblance within the songwriting. So it was all 4 of us this time around, but All did the majority of the composing aspect. The dynamics changed ever so slightly, but it's still it's still a democracy, is the songwriting element in Evile.
Is that an important element for you guys to as you move forward now, to have that sort of balance that everybody feels like they've contributed at least to a certain extent to the material you're putting out?
Definitely. I mean, it's you get these guys that are the solo songwriters and everything has to be their way or nothing at all, because they seem like they're the oracle in terms of the songwriting. But for us, we've always had that thing, whereas if one person thinks an idea doesn't work, we'll kind of vote on it, we'll work it through, try and take things down different paths and explore every possible idea we can until we realize that that doesn't work and it's no longer needed in the song. We never tell anyone to shut up. Everyone's ideas are viable and everyone's constructive in what they say. Some ideas, you know right from the bat that they are absolutely useless and they're never going to work, but you have to try them because sometimes you fluke it and you end up with a really, really awesome part. So you just have to go through the motions sometimes, but there's no ideas that anyone contributes that we say, nah, shit. So,
the first thing that I felt about this album is I felt the buzz. Like everybody's really excited. I mean, it's been a long time. Everybody's excited about the record. Then you guys started releasing singles. The excitement levels went even higher because people start to get a taste for what this album is going to be about. Now, for those that are not as lucky as me, who've had a chance to listen to the whole album, from a musical perspective, what do you see as the biggest change from the previous record Skull to this album?
We always try and say we're looking forwards and not backwards. But for this album, we've kind of had to take a step back and look what made us successful when we first emerged in the thrash scene. When we released our first album in 2007 and 2008, when we did Enter the Grave, we were kind of young and adolescent and a little bit naive to the industry. Now, we're working on the fifth album. We realized that the thing we were good at is the incredible speed and the power, but also at changing down gears. But the songwriting element in terms of lyrics, we needed to bring that fun aspect back and the adolescent humor and the tongue-in-cheek nature a little bit. And the new album it's a hodgepodge of all that thrown into one cauldron, boiled it up, and it's the music we wanted to make all along while we were doing things like Five Serpents' Teeth and the fourth album, Skull. And also because of the hiatus, I think the thing that comes over is all that pent-up energy and frustration. It all shows on the new record from front to back. It's quite a dynamic album, but it doesn't let up in terms of pace or energy at all.
I agree 100% with you. If there's one thing that's consistent with the record is the aggression and the intensity that it has. Regardless of where each song is taking you, those two elements stay very consistent from the beginning all the way to the end.
Yeah, I believe so as well. I mean, for us, we genuinely think it's the best album we've ever recorded. Not in terms of the songs, just in terms of delivery and intent behind it. The weight of the music, I think, is going to be a real hard punch to the face for people, and it's the statement we needed to make after 8 years of being away. The music industry is so fickle these days, in good ways and bad ways, and it moves on at such an incredible speed that you have to try and make an impact any way you can. And for someone like us who, as a collective, are getting a little bit older, we're not kids anymore, everyone's kind of grown up physically and mentally in those 8 years. We've had, we've lost loved ones, we've gained loved ones, everyone else has got kids, everyone's grown up a little bit, and that distance away from the music industry has made the energy and intent when we're all together come back. I think the album is a huge release of stress for us all. It's a huge culmination of everyone's best intent, and it definitely shows as being a little bit different to everything we've been done before,
Yeah, I think it's hard to put your finger on it when you're listening to it, but it doesn't feel like you guys just took the formula of the past and then repackage it into the present. It feels like there's something different in there.
Yeah, that ties in with the thing I said last, in terms of looking forward. You always have to go forward. You never retread old ground. I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, but everything in thrash and heavy metal has been done before at some point. But we wanted to do something for us that felt fresh, felt angry and aggressive, without harking back to the same idiom we did for the first and the second album. We wanted it to sound fresh and be old school without it sound like it's been done before, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. You talk about having a new guitar player. How was Adam's integration into the band?
Fantastic. He's such a great guitarist, and he's a great human being to boot as well. So when Matt stepped away from the band, we were in a little bit of a, well, it kind of tipped the apple cart up massively for us. We didn't know what we were going to do, because I've always said Matt was our James Hetfield. The vocal ability and the range he's got, combined with the guitar proficiency, is something that's a very, very rare in what we do. There are guys that can, you know, run around the front of the stage and hit the high notes and do the squeals and screams, but they don't play guitar at the same time, and they certainly don't play the complicated guitar parts that Matt did underneath it all. So we were thinking, you know, crap, we're kind of a little bit stuck now, because Matt's voice was iconic to us. It separated us from the other thrash bands that were doing all the growls and all that kind of stuff. So we were a little bit pickled as to what to do. And then we thought, well, we need a way of making the new guy familiar and being relevant with the fans, and then go from there. So we thought about getting a new vocalist. We thought about getting a new rhythm guitarist, and all one afternoon just came to the conclusion that he'd be the best guy for the job. We talked about it, and logically it made sense. The fans know him, they know the face, they know his online presence. There isn't a better guitarist in my eyes that could do the job. He's, you know, still playing all the old songs. He knows the old material because he co-wrote it all. So that was perfect. The problem then came in who we're going to get to do rhythm guitar. Very, very short list. I think there were 2 people on it. Adam Smith was at the top. He plays locally in a band called Riptide, who are a young up-and-coming UK thrash band. So check those guys out if you can. And he was perfect. We've known him maybe 8 or 9 years now. He was a massive Evile fan when he was just a little kid. Always came to shows in the local area and that kind of thing. And as he's got older, his guitar proficiency has just skyrocketed. So he's perfect. He's a great frontman with his own band. So for us, he's a great rhythm guitarist. He can do the twin guitar solo stuff with all. And if we need him for backing vocals, he's got great vocals for that too. So the marriage between Ol and Adam in terms of 2 front men with guitars now is great. The work balance is fantastic, and he's a perfect fit.
A marriage made in hell.
Yeah, exactly, dude.
One of the elements about this album that I thought was interesting is the sound that it has. It has big sound. It has big volume. It fills in all the gaps. Is there one thing that you attribute to that sort of soundscape that the record has?
I think over the course of the past 4 albums, our sound has it's definitely become more modernized. When we did Enter the Grave, we did it with Flemming Rasmussen in Copenhagen. Obviously, you know, Metallica fame, and he did everything really old school. Everything was kind of analog and done that old way. We actually used the same desk that Master of Puppets was recorded on, so we didn't know what to expect at that time. We half expected there to be a massive red button on the mixing console that just said Metallica sound, and you know, he'd push the button and out would come our sound. Going on from that to work with Russ Russell for Infected Nations, he tightened the sound up somewhat and made it a lot crisper and a lot cleaner, made it sound old school but for a modern era. And it's just an extension of that, really. Every album we've tried to hunt for our sound, and I think we're very, very close now. Chris Clancy, our new producer, he's hit the nail on the head with how we want to sound in terms of that gritty, harsh kind of unfinished sound, but still very, very technically clean for the modern era, for the modern ears. I think the material being as old school sounding as it is as well adds to that, but it also showcases the band's musicianship in a good way.
So would you call this a guitar-driven album, or is that too much of pigeonholing the whole record and giving it just one direction? Is it the guitars, or is it a combination of everything that really pushes the album forward?
It is a combination of everything. We all have our little parts on the album where certain aspects are showcased, but I think more than anything, it's riff-driven. So yeah, guitar-driven, riff-driven. We have ideas that, you know, you can't write a song with just riffs bolted back to back to back to back. It has to flow and it has to go somewhere. There's got to be a little bit of light for every bit of darkness on there. And I think the thing that we're good at is finding a riff and revisiting it throughout a song. So Yeah, in a way, the guitars are the key component, but it's backed up by everything else. We're all riffing around on our own instruments underneath everything, you know. I try and leave space for the vocals and work off the vocal patterns and things like that with my fills. Definitely footwork. I'm not the most technically competent guy in the world in terms of footwork. You know, I look at people like Gene Hoglan and people like that, and they blow me away still. But in terms of tempo, I can certainly keep up. So I don't want to clutter things with my footwork. I want to give the guitars room to breathe, the vocals room to breathe. Because what happens with the frequency range is everything gets in that middle bracket, and it just ends up sounding like an absolute mush. So we're trying to have a bit of separation, but we're all working together to keep that impact, you know.
I think you're underselling yourself. I mean, you may not be the George Best of drummers, but I think you're at the very least a Paul Gascoigne of drummers.
Oh, that's fantastic, because I like a drink.
And if we've talked enough about guitars, let's talk about your drums. Did you have a game plan coming into this album in terms of what you wanted your drums to sound like, or how did you want to attack the drums for the album?
Yeah, I mean, I used my kit is a Mapex Saturn 3 series, and I absolutely love them. They're what are they now? They're let me think. They're a maple and walnut shell. So you get a load of low-end resonance from the walnut plies, but you also get a lot of attack from the maple. So I've always liked smaller tom sizes. I've got an 8, 10, 12 at the top. I've got 14 and 16 floor toms, and it's double kit. That's my kit. I feel very comfortable with that. And I've got 2 of those kits. So my old one was what I used on the first 4 albums. This time around, I've used one with shallower toms. So what it does, it punches harder. The toms are a little bit brighter, but they still have the same configuration as my old kit. So it's familiar in terms of ergonomics. On the album, I think I do have a very, not unique sound, but you can tell it's my kit a long way away. I try and tune everything kind of low in the mix. I like everything really kind of fat and punchy, but I think the key aspect is my snare work. I have a very, very unique snare, and I tune it a certain way, so when it's recorded, it really cracks. And I like it to sound like if you heard maybe a couple of bars of our tracks, you'd know it was me playing drums. You have your definitive sound, don't you? And I think perhaps the snare is what makes me stand out.
Yeah, I feel like it has like an earthy sound to it, very well grounded.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when we did the third album, Russ actually used a sample of a Colt 45 pistol underneath, just to give it an extra crack. It was really low in between 3 layers of snare drums, but it just gave it that extra snap. Whereas this time around, I didn't need to do that. I've worked out how to get that myself now. But in terms of prep for the studio, that's enough about my actual drum kit. In terms of prep, I hadn't played drums for maybe 8 or 9 months prior to rehearsing for the new studio stuff. I fractured my hand really badly at some point last year, not last year, year before, and that took a fair while to heal properly. I couldn't grab sticks and I couldn't really move it around too much, so that hampered that. Then, you know, after Christmas, lockdown hit for us all in the UK, as it did for everyone else because of COVID. So we couldn't physically get to our instruments. Well, the guitarists obviously have guitars lying around at home, but as a drummer with such ridiculously huge kit, I couldn't access it. So yeah, I kind of sat on my hands a bit and waited for a little break in the action. And then we got a call from the label saying, we found you a producer in a studio. You've got like a 3-week window. Are you ready? So we had to kind of pull our socks up and go, yeah, we're ready, because we didn't want any more delays. You know, after 8 years, last thing you need is more of a delay when it's your time to shine. So sticking as much to the label's schedule as we could. We went in the studio, got it recorded within 3 weeks. I gave myself five days in total to do the drum tracks, and I did them in 3. And I'm very pleased with that. That's the fastest I've ever got drum tracks down. And I think I attribute that to the fact I was in the rehearsal room for maybe 6 to 8 hours each day for the couple of weeks before we went in the studio, just drilling on with all the backings to click tracks, all that kind of stuff, just getting my head and my hands back up to speed after, you know, so many months.
was there a song, because of all those delays, because of everything that you just mentioned, your hand and everything that went into it, was there a song that for you was perhaps a little bit more difficult to nail, that really drove you nuts on this record?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a middle fill section in War of Attrition, and I believe that's the fastest track in terms of BPM on the entire album. There's a breakdown section in the middle where everything cuts out, and there's a huge drum fill to go back into the chorus and the verse. Just getting my hands up to that speed after so long away from the kit was difficult, but that's something that will come back in time. That muscle memory and fast snappiness around the toms at the upper side of the kit, that'll come back. In terms of technicality, the opening track, Paralyzed, there's a half-time section before the main solo, and there's a little bit on there where I tried to be a little bit clever and do some kind of Sean Reinert and Gene Hoglan kind of stuff. Little splashy fills going on with the Bell of the Ride and loads of quick double kick riffs. That was a challenge, because I haven't had to split my brain in two that way for a long time. So there's little bits that tripped me up, but familiarity breeds ease, and I'm sure when we get gigging and get active a little bit more doing the rounds, I'm sure those bits are parts that I'll actually look forward to in the songs rather than dread coming up.
As you look back now at the final product, I mean, we're weeks away from you guys releasing this to the world. So as you look back at this final product, was this a labor of love or just sheer willpower from you guys?
Combination of the two. We needed to do it for ourselves. We needed to prove that after 8 years away, we're still viable, we're still relevant. In 8 years, a lot has happened. You know, like I said, Ol's got 2 kids. Matt has got 3 daughters now. We've all got a little bit older, a little bit wiser, and bands have formed and broken up in the time that we've been away. You know, that's scary to think. People have got old. And the fact that we've still got our fan base that have stayed with us, and we're ready with this awesome new album, it just kind of cements the fact that had we given up for any reason, had we all stepped away from music to do other things, it would have been such a wrong decision. And, you know, alongside that, the fact that Napalm have such ridiculous trust in us as musicians to do a new album after so long away, everything's kind of lining up for a really, really strong release, and we're overdue it. You know, we should have done this album back in 2014.
I was going to say, the other element that you didn't mention was Slayer retire, you guys come back, so it's like perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I would give, you know, my left testicle to have the 5th of the fame and success that Slayer have had. They're such ridiculously, you know, awesome dudes. We know them pretty well anyway. Gary's a good friend of ours from touring with Exodus. But the fact that those guys aren't around anymore just shows you that even if you are the best in the business, your longevity only lasts so long. So you've got to really make a statement while you can, because you don't know what's around the corner, you know? Everything that happened with myself at Christmas when I was ill, a couple of years before, everything with my hand. I lost my mum in 2015 to cancer. That came out of nowhere. Life's too short. You got to make the best of it. And this is the opportunity we've all collectively been waiting for, you know, 7, 8 years.
I have one last question for you, and that is this album, I feel like I know the answer, but I got to ask you so I have you on the record, and then I can come back after you if things don't go your way. which is this album a sign of things to come for the band? Like, is this the rebirth of Evile? So we're going to see more albums on a more consistent basis as we move forward?
Definitely. We need it for ourselves, and the fans need it. We need to keep the snowball getting bigger and bigger and bigger. One of the reasons we went with Napalm as a label is they've got other bands on their roster that were similar size to us, and now they're a household name. You know, they see the benefit and the potential in garnering that, you know, that aspect and that power and that presence and that passion we have for music. I can't see myself doing anything else with my life. I mean, being a musician is first and foremost for me, always has been. I'll always be, you know, I'll always have zero money in my bank account. I don't care. But as a musician, you need that creative outlet. And if that path is drawn for me until, you know, I die on a drum stool or something at a gig, or what a way to go. I don't want to do anything else. If I can inspire 2 little kids to start playing drums, amazing, job done. But I think Napalm giving us that chance, the fact that we're all still so hungry for it after so long off, things are definitely looking up in the Evile camp. So definitely a statement of intent, definitely a statement of more to come, and there's a heck of a lot more music in us all. So roll on album 6.
Well, I just want to thank you for your time today, man. This was an absolute pleasure. I had such a great time talking to you about the record. All the best to you guys. The album drops April 30th on Napalm Records, Hell Unleashed. Go check these guys out. Thank you for your time, man. All the best, Ben.
Thank you. Appreciate it, dude.
Take care, man. Bye.
Bye.